If you find my videos useful, please have a look at this link here, and I'll put a link below, and you can gladly, if you wanted to donate, I'd be very grateful. My name's Alan Hart, and today we're going to look at how to wire an S-plan. I'm also going to show you how an S-plan works so that you can understand an S-plan. When you have a look in a wiring centre, all wiring centres are not going to be the same, so you need to understand what you're looking at and what you're looking for. So what I'll do is we're going to have a look at micro switches. So I'm going to, if you have a look up there now, you'll see I've got a micro switch there. We're going to look at how the zone valve works. So if you have a look up there, we'll have a zone valve. And also I've got a special guest. I've got Danny the Apprentice, so we can follow Danny's journey today, Danny the Apprentice. So I'll add a link to him here as well, and if you can give him some feedback, if you can give him a like, he'll be really grateful, and add some comments about him as well in the video. Yeah, let's have a look. Let's go and have a look. So we've just got Danny the Apprentice, and he's drawing an S-plan. He's going to start with, starting with the fuse spur. So where's the fuse spur, Danny? So he's got the fuse spur on there, and then he's going to work his way up to the wiring centre, etc, etc. So I'll just leave him a few minutes now, and then we'll come back to him. So after the fuse spur, Danny, what have we got next?
The wiring centre.
So what have we got after the wiring centre, Danny?
We've got the time control.
And then after the time control?
The room stat.
Yep, the room stat. And then where does it go from the room stat?
And then the zone valve calls for heat. So
Yeah, so then it's got the zone valve. And then after the zone valve, where does it go then?
to the boiler.
At the moment, Danny, we've just wired one zone valve into this. So can you explain how this would work?
Yeah, so turn the fuse on, goes to the wiring centre, which then goes to the time control. That then goes back to the wiring centre, to the thermostat, the room stat, then back to the wiring centre, to the zone valve, back to the wiring centre, and then to the boiler.
So Danny's now going to go through the drawing that he's done. So this is Danny's training. So just bear with him a little bit. What we'll do after this, I'm going to go through all this again, and I'm going to strip some wiring centres down, and we're going to look at micro switches, and we're going to look at zone valves. We'll look at all the shabam. But I'll let Danny show you his drawing first. Over to you, Danny.
Right, so we've got us fuse spur. So if we switch that on, send the signal to the wiring centre, then to the time control.
So send a signal. It's sending live to there, isn't it?
Yeah.
To wiring centre.
Yeah.
Your mains.
Yeah. And then if we're calling for hot water.
So now when you switch your spur on, it's gone to your wiring centre, and your mains is now gone to your time clock. And then when you switch your time clock,
If we call for hot water, we'll send the signal back to the wiring centre.
But you've done drawing a bit wrong, haven't you here?
Yeah, I forgot to put it back through the wiring centre.
So you've done it on cylinder start there.
Yeah, but normally it would go through the wiring centre, back to the cylinder start, which then would open the zone valve for hot water, which then would send the signal back to the wiring centre and then to the boiler.
And then what if we wanted the hot water heating?
So if we wanted the heating on, we'd same again, back to the wiring centre. Time control would come on. We'd turn
for central heating now. Yeah.
Yeah, then the room stat would turn that up, which then sends signal back to the wiring centre, go back to the zone valve, open that for the central heating, and then send the signal back to the wiring centre and then to the boiler.
Yeah, well done. So if you've got any comments on that, please add them in comments below. Please add them below. Danny's learning, he's just training, so I just thought I'd let you follow his journey really. But what we'll do now, we'll go through that in a bit more detail. Yeah, so let's have a look now. First of all, I'd like to say, before you touch anything with electric or electricity, please be very, very careful and make sure that you're competent and you've been on the appropriate training courses. Electricity can be very dangerous, and yeah, I don't want you to be hurting yourself. I'd like to thank you Danny for that. Please add some comments below for Danny. He really does like encouragement, so if you could add him some comments, he'll be very, very happy. So the first thing, to recap on that, what we've got, if we have a look up here, we've got a fuse spur, and when we switch the fuse spur, it turns on. And if we have a look on the back of the fuse spur, we can see we've got a live, and we've got a neutral, and we've got an earth. Them now are going to the wiring centre. So we'll have a look at that now. Be very careful with electricity, because we don't want electric shock. So on the board that we've got for testing, we've actually got a 3-pin plug. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to plug that into this socket here, and then we will imagine that this wire is coming from the fused spur. I also want to show you the importance of checking and testing with a multimeter. So I'm just going to switch this switch off. So it's switched off on the switch, and I'm going to plug my plug in. And now I'm going to take off the wiring centre. So we're just going to set as multimeter to volts. This here is the incoming flex, there, this wire. So if we have a look on this wire here, we've got the browns there. So that's the live, the blue is the neutral, and the green and the yellow is the earth wire. So these now should be dead, because the switch is switched off. But this is what I want to show you about correct isolation and safe isolation. If we now check on there, we can see we've still got 240 volts. Now I'll show you the reason for that. That couldn't have happened at a better time really, because I'm testing it out with multimeter, and this is no trick this. What's actually happened is the switch on here is faulty, and that's why. So it wasn't isolated. So now I've unplugged the plug, and we'll just check it again. And we'll just zoom in there now, and I'll just show you. So now we know that we've got safe isolation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back on again, and then we'll go through the sequence so we can test and show you the sequence of what's going on. So I've plugged the plug back in, and we've now got 240 volts again. And if we look on the other wires, there's no voltage on this one, on the brown. There's no voltage on the black. And there's no voltage on there either. So now what we'll do, we'll follow the journey now. So we've got our live wires here, which we've just got to be careful because they are live. For the purposes of the video, I've just unplugged. I've unplugged it, so I've got safe isolation. at the moment. So no, we know that if it's unplugged physically, we've got safe isolation. And then what we've got, if this were back on, so if we had 240 volts coming to here still, then we'd have a wire from here, we'd have a permanent live to where the clock would go. Now this clock is actually a wireless clock, and these controls here are also wireless. But what I'll do is I'll show you on the back of the clock here. If you can have a look, it shows you there's a neutral there, there's a live. So when we look at the clock on the back plate of the clock, that's the neutral and that's the live. And then we've got two other wires here, and these are the switch lives, which we'll show you them. I'll show you them in a minute. We'll connect the power now back onto this. So just again, be careful, safe isolation. Look at that little man there, just be very, very careful. So now we know we've got as 240 volts back to the wiring centre. So again, that's coming now from the spur to the wiring centre, and now it's going up to here. So if we check up there, we can see on that brown, we can see on that multimeter there, we've got 240 volts, and then we've got as neutral as well, less than 15. So we know now that we've got live up to these connections here. And now what we need to do, we need to get a live back from here to the next point, which normally would be your room start or your cylinder start. Because this is a wireless control, it makes it much easier. So all we've got there, we've got these wires here, and they come back down to this wiring centre here. I'm just going to unplug the plug again, and I'm going to test with the bleep test just to show you the wires. I'll just turn this to bleep. So we know there, this brown here in the wiring centre, we know it's this brown here, and we know the black is the black wire here. And if we plug the plug back in, at the moment we know there's no power to them at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the clock back on, and then we'll call for heat, and I'll show you the different zones on here. We'll show you the power coming back to here. So I've now put the clock on, and the permanent live that feeds this clock, as we switch this zone on, and as we turn the thermostat, the room thermostat or the cylinder stat, whichever zone we're working off, it will then link it together, and it will make one of these wires here live. I'll show you that now. So if we boost zone 1, and if we turn this thermostat up here, you'll see that's come on. And if we have a look in wiring centre here now, we'll see that one of these, so the brown on here is zone 1. But the colour of the wires don't really matter. You need to be testing it with a multimeter so you can see. So then if we turn that back off, we'll see that that's gone back off. Just for me to try and explain what's happening with that valve so far, I've got the zone valve here, the head, and I've wired in. So the orange and the grey at the moment, they're not wired in. So I just want to show you what happens when I put the live neutral and earth down that valve. So I've just plugged this in on the plug. And what's happened is that is opening that valve. Don't know if you can see, it's a bit hard to see on there, but that is opening the valve. So your brown wire, what your brown wire does, your brown wire opens the motor. And just to try and explain that to you, just so you can understand what's actually happening, this is the motor inside, or this is a synchron motor, and this moves. So what I'll do now is I'll put the power back onto that and I'll show you what's happening. So I don't know if you can see that on there, it might be a little bit tricky to see. But that motor is moving. So when that motor moves, what it's doing, I'll just make that safe. When that motor moves, it moves them cogs in there, and that moves, it's a bit awkward, but it moves that there round, and as that moves that round, it does a couple of things. One, it moves a little paddle in there, and that opens and closes the valve for the direction of the water inside the valve. And the other thing it does is we have a micro switch, and now this is where your orange wire and your grey wire come into play. Whatever we have on one side of this wire, and it depends how it's wired, so some people will say your orange will go to the boiler, but sometimes it's not that wired that way, it might be wired the opposite way around. It doesn't really matter as far as I know, because all this is just a switch. So what happens with this, these cogs move here, it's opened that valve, and at the same time this cog here, this part of it, touches the micro switch, and it pushes the micro switch, and that opens that connection there. So whatever voltage you've got at one side, so the feed in, so normally it might be the grey, so if that would be a permanent live, or it could be a permanent live, you'd have to check with your multimeter. When this pushes onto there, you would then get, on your orange, you would then get whatever's on this side. So if that's 240, you'd have 240 on this side. So then this orange wire then would go back and feed the boiler. There's a couple of things with this. Sometimes if you've got a fault and the boiler's constantly on, it could be that your micro switch in there is jammed. If that were jammed open, your clock could be turned off and your boiler could be, so your boiler could be on. So you're not calling for heat, your thermostat, your room thermostat's turned down and your clock, there's no demand. But if this micro switch is jammed, then the permanent live from there could still bring the boiler on. So that's just something to bear in mind. Another fault that you can have with these is the cogs can wear off. I don't know if you can see on there, but the cogs can wear off, and if the cogs wear off, then it wouldn't move. So you could have power going in, but it's not working, and that's another fault with that. Another fault as well, not as common, is the ball inside. If it's a ball or a paddle, could come off. So when there's another demand, say for instance you put the hot water on and this is the heating valve, then you may get hot water down this valve because this has come off. So that's just another little tip with that really. So if we have a look in this wiring centre now, again this is live now. So we've got us earth and we've got us permanent live there. No, sorry, there. Permanent live is there. As we've seen already, one side of that permanent live is going to the time clock. Excuse me. But the other side of the permanent live is going to the orange on this one. So at the moment, the orange has 240 volts to it. And if we have a look on the other side there, we've got the grey. And if we have a look on the grey, at the moment, it hasn't got 240 volts. So if we remember again, this micro switch, so this is wired, it's wired the opposite way to what I would normally do it, but as I say, I don't think it really matters. So at the moment we've got 240 volts on this orange, and we haven't got any voltage on that grey. So what we need to do is, if we now put demand onto the clock, what we'll get down one of these, whichever one it is on here, we'll get permanent live. Then once we get as permanent live down here, that will open the motor. The motor in the valve will push that micro switch, and then it's going to send us 240 volts down this grey here. So I'll just put demand on now. So again, on as orange, we've got 240, and then I'm not sure which one. Yeah, so on this brown here, it's the brown that comes for the heating. So now that should, on the grey, have 240. So for me to explain now what's actually happened, if you imagine you're live from your fuse spur, comes into here. Let's forget about the neutrals and the earths for a minute. So the live is here. It goes from this wiring centre to the clock as a permanent live. So if you switch the spur off, this would go off. If you switch the spur back on, this would be permanent live. And then in here, when you click one of these zones on, it connects, if you like, connects the wires together, and it sends a switched live back to here, and then you switched live from here. So one of these is hot water and one of them is heating, but you switch wires, go to your browns on your zone valve, and that would permanently open the zone valve as we've shown before. So that would permanently open the zone valve. When the power then was turned off, so the demand was satisfied, then what happens is the spring load, the spring in your zone valve actually moves this back. So that's how that works. And then, as I've said before, your micro switch, then your power from this, your button presses, and that'll send power then to the boiler, and the boiler will fire up. Your multimeter is your friend. There's lots of different S-plans. There's people that wire things in all bizarre and different ways. So learn how to use a multimeter. Go on a training course for a multimeter. There's some diagrams on your right hand side here of some examples of S-plans, and hopefully this video has been of some use to you. I hope this video has been of some use. Don't forget, if you have a look up there, if you could just give Danny a little like below. See, he's there, he's just pleading away there. He just wants some love. So yeah, if you can give him a like, and if you could subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell. And thanks for watching. And as I've said at the start of this video, if you like what we do, then please click on the link below, and please add a donation onto my chosen charity. I would be very grateful for that. It actually means the world to me. So yeah, thanks for watching.